Right Buddy here from Backroad Buddies of Red Tail Lodge. And the video we want to share with you today is about Rocky Mountain National Park on the eastern slope. Now, in the previous video, we had spent several days on the western slope, the western side of the national park. And so we drove over to the east side on Trail Ridge Road, which is a nice scenic drive from Grand Lake over to Estes Park. So along the way, we stopped at Milner Pass, which is right there on the Continental Divide at Poudre Lake. And then we stopped again at the Alpine Visitor Center, which is up at the top before you start heading back down. And there's a short little Alpine Ridge trail there that we took up to the high point there, which has some nice panoramic views. Now, they would have been better on a normal year, but there was already starting to be some more smoke from all the wildfires. They had just opened up Trail Ridge Road just a few days before. It was initially closed for a while because there was too much smoke and there was the threat of the wildfire entering the park, and there was poor visibility on Trail Ridge Road. And then we had a snowstorm come through with high winds, and so that cleared out a lot of the smoke and calmed down some of the wildfires, but then there was 5 to 6 foot drifts of snow across the road, so the road was closed again there. So we really lucked out that the day we planned on driving over, they had opened up the road for us. So most of the snow had melted away, it had warmed back up, but because it had warmed back up, the fires were starting to flare up again, and we were getting quite a bit more smoke in the area. But we were able to get over. So after we stopped at the Alpine Visitor Center, we stopped again at Rock Cut, which is, there's a little trailhead there too, but we didn't take the trail. But I normally like to stop at Rock Cut. In addition to the nice views, there's kind of a field of rocks and boulders there, and you almost always see pika and marmot, which are, pika's a little tiny animal, about yay big, and then a marmot is like a groundhog. And so you can usually see those, so we stop every time, and of course this time was no different. And then the rest of the way down the eastern side of Trail Ridge Road, we didn't actually stop at any of the viewpoints and parking areas. There are quite a few coming down the other side along the switchbacks. But because it was so smoky, we decided not to stop. So we headed over just quickly through Estes Park and over to Estes Park Campground at East Portal, which is a campground we never stayed at before. We were hoping to stay in Moraine Park Campground inside the national park, but there was no openings. We couldn't get a reservation there. So we spent 3 nights in Estes Park Campground. It was a really nice campground. It's not set up for big rigs, but for tent camping or for a small rig, it's kind of tight corners and not very level sites. But it was really beautiful. And it's far enough from town that it's nice and peaceful and quiet, and you have a lot of deer and elk wander through the campground, and so that was really nice. So we stayed 3 nights there, and this was back in September. And the first full day we had a time entry permit. Well, we actually had timed entry permits for both days, full days we were there. And so we went on a nice long hike in the Bear Lake area. So we had to go to the park and ride and take a shuttle to the Bear Lake trailhead. And we actually did, I think on all trails they call it the 4-lake loop. And so it's a really pretty hike, but a very popular hike. So if you want solitude, this is not the hike for you, because there's tons of people along these trails. It gets a little better the further you get from the trailhead, but it's pretty crowded trails. But rightfully so, because it's just gorgeous scenery. So it's worth doing. It'll probably be a while before we go back to that area because there's so many other hikes in Rocky Mountain National Park that are less crowded. So the 4 lakes, we first hit Nymph Lake and then Dream Lake and then up to Emerald Lake. And then you have to backtrack to Dream Lake, and then we hiked over, you kind of go over another ridge over to Lake, no, I'm not going to get the name of this right, Hayaha, I think is how it's pronounced. And it's kind of a boulder field along the shoreline there. So it's a little bit of a scramble to actually get to the lake, but it's very pretty. And then we kind of continued the loop around to Alberta Falls, which is pretty, really nice falls. But of course we're getting closer to the trailhead, so there's a lot of people around. And that was kind of our hike for the day. And then we headed back to the campground. And then the next day we didn't feel like going for a hike again, so we were just going to go into the park for a picnic since we had a timed entry permit. So we initially tried to go over and check out the Endo Valley picnic area, but we got over there and they were doing some maintenance with some chainsaws, and we're like, this isn't very peaceful. So we hopped back in the van and drove over to our favorite little picnic area called Tuxedo Park Picnic Area. And I don't think they actually mark it on the park map, but it's along Bear Lake Road. And so just look for it on the side. It's not a very big parking area, but you go down a couple flights of stairs and the picnic area is down below, and it's right next to Glacier Creek. Just really nice, peaceful picnic area right along the creek there, and there's hardly anybody there ever. I don't know why, but there isn't. And along the way there we had to go through a little construction area on, I think that's Highway 36 there, sort of near Marine Park. Well, before you turn down Bear Lake Road. And there was this semi-truck that had slid off the road, so I don't know how long he was there or how long he was going to be there, but they kind of had us down to one lane to get by there. And then when we were leaving Tuxedo Park, there's a little kind of turnaround area on Bear Lake Road that they were starting to turn people around, because not only was the Bear Lake Trailhead parking lot full, which it almost always is full, and this of course was a Saturday. We had hiked on Friday, so I can't imagine how busy it was on Saturday. But there's a parking lot for the Bear Lake shuttle bus, and that was full. So the parking lot was full to catch the shuttle. There's a couple other shuttles you can take over to there, but it kind of makes for a long trip if you can find another place to park and catch another shuttle over there and then switch shuttles to the Bear Lake shuttle. So they were turning people around on Bear Lake Road and not letting them up Bear Lake Road because there was no place to go. So we were glad we did our hike on Friday. And then after we were done with our picnic, we drove back into the town of Estes Park, and it was hopping. It was Saturday. There was tons of people, tons of pedestrians. There was, I think, an arts and crafts show going on at the time. But we were just gonna stop and walk through town and find an ice cream shop. Well, we struggled to find a parking spot because it was just so packed, and we decided to head back to the campground instead. So we headed back and spent a relaxing afternoon and evening at the campground, got to know some of our campsite neighbors, and there was a lot of deer just roaming through the campground and right through our campsite actually, and kept us quite entertained. And then the next day it was time to head home, and we headed home via what's called Peak to Peak Scenic Byway. And because we wanted to check out the fall colors, this was September. There was a few aspen that had turned, but nothing spectacular. But it was still a pretty drive. So then we headed home. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Rocky Mountain National Park, Eastern Slope. Thanks for watching. And if you want more details about our stay there on the Eastern Slope, you can look in the description below. There's a link to our related blog post, so check that out. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. We'd really appreciate that. Ta-ta for now.